My name is Lauren, and I am 34 years old, and I am standing in my mother's driveway in the rain, watching her wave goodbye to my older sister Megan like she just won the lottery. Megan's SUV pulls away with her husband and her two perfect blonde children, and my mother keeps waving long after the taillights disappear. I have been standing here for 4 minutes. She has not looked at me once. The rain is soaking through my jacket, and my 3-year-old daughter Ella is asleep in her car seat with her little hand pressed against the window glass. My mother finally turns around, and her face drops like she forgot I was even there. She says, "Oh, Lauren, you're still here?" I say, "Yeah, Mom, I'm still here." That was the last Christmas I spent at her house. That was 3 years ago. And I remember thinking in that moment that something inside me finally cracked. Not broke, cracked. Because breaking would mean I still had feelings left to break. Cracking was quieter. Cracking was me realizing that I had spent my whole life trying to earn a hug that was never mine to win. My mother, Diane, had 2 daughters, but everyone knew which one mattered. Megan was the golden child. She was born first, and she was born perfect. Straight A's without trying, prom queen, cheer captain, married her high school sweetheart Derek, who became a dermatologist with a practice in Scottsdale. They bought a 6-bedroom house with a pool and a guest house, and every time my mother visited, she would come back with photos she would shove in my face, like she was the one who achieved it. "Look at this kitchen, Lauren. Look at the marble on these countertops. Megan is so lucky." I was the other one, the difficult one. That's what they called me at family dinners when they thought I wasn't listening. Lauren is difficult. Lauren has always been difficult. Because I got C's in math, because I dyed my hair purple in 10th grade, because I dropped out of community college to wait tables at a diner off the highway, because I got pregnant at 23 with a guy named Jesse who sold vape pens out of his Civic and told me he loved me until I asked him to pay for the ultrasound. Then he ghosted, blocked me everywhere. I raised Ella alone. My mother never forgave me for that. Not because I had a baby alone, but because it made her look bad at bridge club. She told me once while folding laundry that my choices reflect on her. She said that with a straight face. I was 24 years old, holding a screaming infant, and my mother was worried about her bridge club reputation. So I left. I packed a bag and I drove 5 hours north to Flagstaff, where rent was cheaper and I didn't have to run into Megan at the grocery store. I found a tiny apartment above a garage. I worked double shifts at a sports bar. I cleaned houses on my days off. I saved every dollar in a coffee can on top of my fridge, and I told myself that my daughter would never feel like the invisible one. I would burn the whole world down before Ella ever felt like I felt. That's the thing about growing up invisible. You either spend your whole life begging to be seen, or you spend it building something so loud that nobody can look away. I chose the second one. It started small. I had a regular at the bar named Tommy, who was old and retired and bored. He told me stories about flipping houses in the 90s. He said the key was buying properties nobody wanted, the ugly ones, the ones with bad photos on Zillow. He said you add a coat of paint and some new floors, and suddenly people see what you always saw. I listened to him because he tipped well and because he reminded me of my grandfather who died when I was 12, the only person in my family who ever looked at me like I mattered. When Tommy died, he left me $20,000. His daughter tried to fight it, but the will was clear. To Lauren, who always listened. I cried for 3 days. Then I bought my first house. It was a disaster, a 2-bedroom ranch in a neighborhood that made the pizza delivery guy lock his car doors. The windows were boarded up, the roof leaked, there was a family of raccoons living in the crawl space. But the bones were good. That's what the inspector said. The bones were good. I spent 6 months living in that house with Ella, sleeping on a mattress in the only dry room, while I taught myself how to patch drywall from YouTube videos. My hands were raw, my back ached. My mother called once to ask if I was done with my little fixer-upper phase because Megan was pregnant again and we were all supposed to fly to Cabo for a gender reveal. I said I couldn't afford it. She said, "Oh well, maybe next time." She didn't ask about my house. She didn't ask about Ella. She didn't ask if I was eating. I sold that house 2 years later for $60,000 more than I paid. I remember sitting at the closing table, staring at the check like it was a magic trick. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell anyone. I put the money in the bank, and I started looking for the next ugly house. The next one was worse, a 3-bedroom foreclosure in a town nobody had heard of. The previous owners had stripped the copper pipes. The kitchen was a crime scene of mold and neglect. The backyard was a jungle of dead trees and broken glass. But the lot was huge, and the school district was good, and I had learned by then that you don't buy a house for what it is, you buy it for what it could become. I worked harder than I ever worked in my life. I learned plumbing from a retired veteran who lived next door and took pity on me. I learned electrical from a woman at the hardware store who saw me crying in the parking lot and handed me a wiring book. I learned that people want to help you when they see you trying. That's the secret nobody tells you. The world opens up when you stop waiting for permission. 3 years later, I sold that house for $180,000 profit. I was 29 years old, I had $20,000 in savings, and a 4-year-old daughter who knew the difference between a load-bearing wall and a stud. I was nobody. I was a high school dropout with a purple hair past and a baby daddy who sold nicotine to teenagers. But I was standing in a bank in Flagstaff with a certified check that said otherwise. My mother found out through Megan, who found out through a cousin who saw my name on a real estate blog. My mother called me for the first time in 8 months. Her voice was sweet like honey on a razor blade. She said, "Lauren, I heard you're doing so well. I am so proud of you." She said it like she had been cheering for me all along, like she hadn't forgotten every Christmas, like she hadn't waved goodbye to Megan while I stood in the rain. I didn't call her out. I just said, "Thanks, Mom." And I hung up, and I looked at Ella, who was drawing a picture of our new house with crayons on the floor, and I promised myself that I would never need my mother's approval again. Because needing someone who doesn't see you is just a slower way of disappearing. The third house changed everything. It was a manor. That's not a word I ever thought I would use seriously, but that's what the listing called it. A manor, 7,000 square feet on 12 acres of land, in a historic district outside Sedona. The house was built in 1928 by a copper baron who went bankrupt in the Depression. It had been abandoned for almost 20 years. The roof was collapsing, the foundation was cracked, the grounds were overgrown with mesquite and tumbleweeds. But the bones, God, the bones were beautiful. The listing price was $700,000, which was insane for a property that needed $1 million in repairs. But I had learned something by then. I had learned that rich people don't want to fix things. They want turnkey. They want stainless steel and quartz countertops and a pool that doesn't have a dead raccoon floating in it. They don't want a project. A project is a problem. A project is a money pit. A project is for people like me who don't know how to stop working. I offered $600,000. They countered at $650,000. I offered $625,000 and a 30-day close. They took it. I remember signing the paperwork with hands that were shaking so bad the notary asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I was not fine. I was terrified. I was 31 years old and I had just bought a crumbling mansion on a hill, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I did it anyway. That's the difference between me and my mother. She waited for things to happen. I made them happen. The renovation took 2 years. 2 years of 12-hour days. 2 years of dust and debt and doubt. I took out loans I wasn't sure I could repay. I hired contractors who ghosted me. I fired a project manager who tried to pocket the lighting budget. I drove a truck with no air conditioning through Arizona summers with Ella buckled in the back seat eating goldfish crackers and telling me she wanted to go home. But we were home. That crumbling mansion on the hill was home. It just didn't know it yet. I learned to source materials from salvage yards. I found original light fixtures in a barn 40 miles away. I restored the hardwood floors myself, hand sanding every inch until my knees screamed. I planted a garden, a real garden, with vegetables and flowers and a little fence that Ella painted purple because that was my old hair color and she knew it made me laugh. I built a life out of broken things. And when I walked through those front doors on the day the last contractor left, I fell to my knees in the foyer and I cried because the bones were good, but I was the one who made them sing. The manor was worth $2.8 million on appraisal day. I owed less than half that. I was a millionaire. I was a 33-year-old single mother dropout who had just become a millionaire. And I didn't tell my mother for 6 months. When I finally did, it was by accident. Megan posted a photo of the manor on Facebook. I still don't know how she found it. Probably Zillow. Probably some nosy cousin. But there it was. A photo of the exterior at sunset, with the lights glowing through the restored windows and Ella's purple fence in the foreground. Megan captioned it, "My sister's incredible renovation. Can you believe this was abandoned?" My mother called me within an hour. She was crying. Real crying or fake crying, I couldn't tell. She said, "Lauren, why didn't you tell me?" I said, "I don't know, Mom." But I did know. I didn't tell her because I wanted to keep something for myself, something she couldn't diminish or ignore or use to make Megan feel better about herself. I didn't tell her because I was afraid she would find a way to make it about her, and I was right. The first Christmas after the manor was finished, I hosted. I sent out invitations, nice ones, hand-addressed with gold foil, because I had never sent anything nice to anyone in my entire life, and damn it, I wanted to. Ella helped me pick out the stamps. She was 6 years old, and she understood that this was important, even if she didn't know why. I invited my mother and my father, who had checked out of our family sometime around 1998 and mostly just watched sports in the basement. I invited Megan and Derek and their 2 kids. I invited my Aunt Carol, who always sent me $20 on my birthday, even when I was difficult. Everyone said yes. Everyone was coming to the manor. I spent 2 weeks preparing. I cooked, I cleaned, I decorated the tree with ornaments Ella and I had made from salt dough and glitter. I set the dining table with my grandmother's china, which my mother had thrown away in 2002, and which I had rescued from a dumpster behind her house. I had kept that china in a box for 15 years, waiting for a table worth putting it on. They arrived at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Megan came first with her family in their leased German SUV. She hugged me. She looked around the foyer with her mouth slightly open. She said, "Lauren, this is insane." She said it like a compliment, but I heard the edge underneath. The "how did you do this" when I was the one with the dermatologist husband and the 6-bedroom house. Derek shook my hand and said, "Congratulations." He seems genuine. He always seemed genuine. I never hated Derek. I just hated what he represented. My parents arrived 20 minutes late. My father shuffled in wearing the same cardigan he had worn since 2005. He kissed my cheek and said, "Nice place." And then he found the TV in the guest suite and did not emerge for the rest of the night. My mother stood in the doorway. She looked around slowly. Her eyes moved from the restored ceiling beams to the antique light fixtures to the newel post I had hand-carved myself. She looked at the Christmas tree with Ella's ornaments. She looked at the china on the dining table. And then she looked at me. She said, "Well, Lauren, you certainly have been busy." That was it. No, I'm proud of you. No, this is beautiful. Just a dismissal wrapped in small talk. She walked past me into the living room and sat down on my velvet couch and started telling Megan about her new neighbor who had a pool. I stood in the foyer for a long moment. Ella tugged my sleeve. She said, "Mommy, why does Grandma look mad?" I said, "She's not mad, baby. She's just not good at being happy for people." The evening went sideways fast. My mother drank 3 glasses of wine and started making comments about the china. "Oh my God, Lauren, is this Mom's old set? I thought we threw this out." I said, "We did. I pulled it out of the dumpster." She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't joking. She asked about the renovation costs, and when I told her, she said, "Oh, well, that explains the loan." Megan shifted uncomfortably. Derek looked at his phone. My mother said, "I just mean it's a lot of debt for a single mother. What if the market turns?" I said, "I'm not worried." She said, "Well, you should be. That's the problem with you, Lauren. You've always been too impulsive." Ella was in the kitchen. I could hear her humming to herself while she arranged cookies on a plate. I took a deep breath. I had promised myself I wouldn't let my mother ruin this. I had promised myself I would be the bigger person. So I smiled. I changed the subject. I asked about Megan's kids. I asked about Derek's practice. I played the role of the gracious host, even though my blood was boiling and my throat was tight and every cell in my body wanted to scream at my mother to leave my house. Christmas morning was worse. Ella woke up at 6 and we opened presents by the fire. It was perfect. Her face when she saw the dollhouse I had built for her from scratch, the way she hugged me around the neck and whispered, "Thank you, Mommy." I had never felt more like I had done something right. Then my mother came downstairs. She was holding a wrapped gift. Not for Ella, for me. She never gave me gifts, not real ones. She handed me the box with a tight smile and said, "I saw this and thought of you." I opened it. It was a sweater, a cheap one, the kind you buy at the airport when you forgot to pack something. It was beige and shapeless and 2 sizes too big. There was no gift receipt, no card, just the sweater. I said, "Thank you, Mom." She nodded and turned to Ella and said, "Isn't your mommy lucky?" Ella looked at her. Ella looked at me. Ella said, "Grandma, my mommy built this whole house with her hands. She doesn't need luck." My mother's face flickered. For half a second, I saw something real, something that looked like shame. But then it was gone, replaced by a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She said, "Well, she certainly did." And then she walked away. That afternoon, Megan found me in the kitchen. She was crying. I had never seen Megan cry outside of funerals. She said, "I'm sorry, Lauren." I said, "For what?" She said, "For her. For Mom. I know how she is. I know she's been hard on you." I said, "It's fine." "It's not fine. It's not fine, and I've never said anything because I didn't know how. But I see you." I see what you've done, and I am so proud of you. I didn't cry when my mother dismissed me. I didn't cry when she gave me that ugly sweater. But I cried when Megan said that. Because for one moment, someone in my family saw me. Not the difficult one, not the disappointment, just Lauren. They left on the 26th. My father emerged from the guest suite long enough to say goodbye. My mother hugged Ella and told her she was getting so big. She hugged me too, but it was the kind of hug you give a stranger at a funeral, brief and uncomfortable and full of obligation. She said we should do this again. I said, yes, we should. And we both knew we wouldn't. I thought that was it. I thought the manor had done its job. It had proved something to my mother, even if she wouldn't admit it. It had made Megan see me. It had given Ella a home. I thought the story was over. I thought I had won. But I forgot something important. My mother didn't just ignore me. She resented me. And resentment doesn't disappear because you succeed. It just finds new ways to hurt you. 6 months later, I got a call from a lawyer, a real estate lawyer from a firm I had never heard of. He said his name was Marcus Webb, and he was representing my mother in a matter regarding the manor. I almost dropped the phone. I said, "I'm sorry, what matter?" He said, "Your mother is filing a claim to the property based on an alleged verbal agreement from 1998 regarding family inheritance and financial support." I laughed. I actually laughed. I said, "She never supported me financially. She never supported me at all." He said, "I'm just the messenger, ma'am. The claim has been filed with the court. You'll need to retain counsel." I hired a lawyer. Her name was Cheryl, and she was a pit bull in reading glasses. She looked at the claim and she looked at me and she said, "This is insane. She has no standing, no documentation, no witnesses, but she's also your mother, and juries sometimes feel sorry for mothers. We need to be careful." I asked my mother about it. I called her. She answered like nothing was wrong. "Hi, Lauren. How's the manor?" I said, "Mom, why are you suing me?" There was a long silence. Then she said, "I'm not suing you. I'm protecting my interests. Your father and I helped you when you were struggling. We gave you money. We gave you support. You wouldn't have this house without us." I said, "You never gave me $1. You never even bought me a birthday present after I turned 15. She said, "That's not true." I said, "It is true." She said, "Well, we'll let the court decide." She hung up. I stared at my phone for an hour. Ella came in from the garden with dirt on her knees and flowers in her hair. She said, "Mommy, why do you look sad?" "I'm not sad, baby. I'm just tired." She climbed into my lap and put her head on her shoulder. She said, "I love you, Mommy. You're the best mommy in the whole world. I held her and I closed my eyes, and I tried to remember that my mother's opinion didn't matter. That I had built this life without her, that I didn't need her to validate anything. But it's hard to remember that when someone is trying to take your house. The lawsuit dragged on for 8 months. 8 months of depositions and document requests and legal fees that made my stomach turn. My mother claimed that she and my father had loaned me $50,000 in 2017, the year I bought my first house. She claimed it was a verbal agreement that I would repay them with interest or transfer ownership of a future property. There was no check, no bank record, no text message, no email, nothing. Just her word against mine. But she had something else. She had Megan. Not willingly at first. Megan testified that she had no knowledge of any loan. She told the truth under oath. But my mother retaliated. She cut Megan out of her will. She stopped speaking to her. She told the whole family that Megan was a traitor who had turned against her own mother. Megan called me crying. She said, "I'm sorry, Lauren. I didn't know she was like this." I said, "Yes, you did. You just never had to see it until now." The case was heading to trial when my mother made a mistake. A big one. She told one of her bridge friends about the lawsuit. That friend had a son who worked at a bank. The son remembered my mother coming in back in 2017, asking about a loan, not giving one, asking for one. She wanted to borrow $50,000 to invest in something. The bank turned her down because her credit was bad. My mother had been in debt for years, credit cards, a second mortgage, a timeshare she couldn't afford. She had been drowning financially while pretending to be the perfect suburban wife. I didn't know any of this. My father didn't know. Megan didn't know. My mother had hidden everything behind a smile and a clean kitchen and a garden club membership. The bridge friend's son contacted my lawyer anonymously. He didn't want to get involved, but he couldn't stand by and watch my mother lie in court. Cheryl deposed him. He testified about my mother's attempted loan. He provided bank records. My mother's case collapsed overnight. She withdrew the lawsuit a week before trial. No apology, no explanation. Just a letter from her lawyer saying the claim was being dropped. I sat in Cheryl's office reading the letter and waiting for the relief to come. But it didn't come. I just felt empty. Because winning against your own mother isn't winning. It's just surviving. I didn't talk to her for a year. A full year of silence. No calls, no texts, no Christmas. I spent that Christmas at the Manor with Ella and Megan and her family. We made a fire. We ate too much food. We played games in the living room until midnight. It was the best Christmas of my life. Because it was mine. Because I chose the people in it. Then my father called. He never called. He said, "Your mother is sick." I said, "What do you mean sick?" He said, "She has cancer. Pancreatic." They caught it late. The doctor says maybe 6 months. I was quiet for a long time. He said, "She wants to see you." I said, "Why?" He said she wants to apologize. I drove to my parents' house the next day. Ella was in school. I went alone. The house was the same beige walls, the same family photos on the wall with me cropped out of half of them. My mother was in the living room on a hospital bed they had set up by the window. She looked small. She had always been small, but she had always seemed bigger, invincible almost. Now she was just a tiny woman in a floral nightgown with yellow skin and hollow eyes. She looked at me and she started crying. Not fake crying, real crying. She said, "I'm sorry, Lauren. I'm so sorry." I said, "I know." She said, "No, you don't know. You don't know what I did." I sat down in the chair next to her bed. I said, "Then tell me." She told me everything. About the debt, about the credit cards, about the timeshare, about the second mortgage she had taken out without telling my father, about how she had been jealous of me. Jealous. Her own daughter. She said, "You did everything I was too afraid to do. You left, you took risks, you built something, and I hated you for it because you made me feel like a coward." I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. She said the lawsuit wasn't about the house. It was about power. She wanted to take something from me, something that mattered, because she had spent her whole life watching other people take things from her. her mother, her husband, her own choices. She said, I wanted to hurt you because you reminded me of what I could have been. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I never forgot you at Christmas, Lauren. Not really. I just couldn't look at you. Because every time I looked at you, I saw the daughter who was strong enough to leave, and I wasn't strong enough to follow. I held her hand. Her fingers were cold and thin. I said, I forgave you a long time ago. She said, how? I said, because I didn't want to become you. She died 3 weeks later. I was there at the end. Megan was too. We held her hands on either side of the bed while she took her last breath. The hospice nurse said it was peaceful. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if anything about my mother was peaceful, but I held her hand anyway, because she was my mother, because no matter what she did, I was still her daughter, and I had spent my whole life trying to earn her love, only to realize in the end that she had just been trying to earn her own. After the funeral, I went back to the manor. Ella was waiting for me on the front porch. She had made me a sign. It said, Welcome home, Mommy. I love you. I picked her up, and I carried her inside, and I sat on the floor in the foyer with her in my lap, the same foyer where I had fallen to my knees 3 years earlier, the same foyer where my mother had stood and dismissed everything I had built. The one I built with my own 2 hands. Megan comes to visit every month now. We talk on the phone every week. She told me once that she feels guilty for being the favorite. She said she wishes she had stood up for me earlier. I told her it wasn't her fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was just a family that forgot how to love each other. I still have the ugly sweater somewhere in a box in the attic. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe because it reminds me that I survived something, that I came out the other side, that the woman who gave me that sweater was broken and scared and jealous and cruel, but she was also my mother, and I loved her, even when she didn't deserve it. That's the hardest part to admit. I loved her anyway. Ella is 9 now. She asked me the other day if I miss Grandma. I said sometimes. She said why? I said because she was my mom. Ella thought about that for a minute. Then she said, when you die, I'm going to miss you every day. I said, I'm not planning on dying anytime soon. She said, I know, but just in case, I want you to know. I cried after she went to bed. Not sad tears, just tears, because somewhere along the way, I stopped being the invisible daughter and started being someone's whole world. And that matters more than any house, any lawsuit, any apology, any Christmas my mother forgot to see me. The manor is quiet at night. The old floors creak. The wind moves through the mesquite trees. Sometimes I walk through the rooms and I think about the copper baron who built this place and lost everything. I think about the people who abandoned it, who let it rot and crumble and fall apart. I think about how something can be so broken that nobody wants to look at it. And then I think about how someone like me can come along and see the bones and decide that broken is just another word for not finished yet. My mother forgot me every Christmas, but I didn't forget myself, and I made damn sure my daughter would never feel forgotten either. The garden is full of flowers now. Ella's purple fence still stands, and every morning I wake up in a house that I built with blood and sweat and tears, and I look out the window at the red rocks of Sedona. And I think about the woman I used to be, the one waiting tables, the one cleaning houses, the one crying in her car because her mother didn't love her enough. I wish I could go back and tell her that she was going to be okay, that she was going to build something beautiful, that the loneliness she felt was just the price of becoming who she was meant to be. But I can't go back. Nobody can. So I just keep moving forward, one room at a time, one floorboard at a time, one Christmas at a time. And every year on Christmas morning, I wake up early. I make coffee. I sit by the fire. And I watch Ella open her presents with the same wonder and joy that I never had. That's my gift to her. That's my gift to myself. The chance to be the mother I never had. The manor stands on the hill. The lights are on. The doors are open. And nobody is invisible here. Not anymore.